Hello, and welcome to Pirates of the Past. I am your host and library director, Veronica LaRoque. While I am not an expert on all things piratical, I am most certainly an enthusiast. If you would like information on the research I completed for this presentation, it will appear at the end of my slides. If you'd like a copy, we'll gladly print you one here at the Northampton Area Public Library. Some of the things we'll be discussing today include the widespread support of piracy, especially in the American colonies, the sensationalism that surrounds pirates and how it happened, what exactly makes a sailor a pirate, and a bit on the golden age of piracy. As a bonus, we'll dig into pirate sightings that are reported to have happened right here in Pennsylvania. So let's begin with the story of the pirate next door. In 1701, in Middletown, New Jersey, Moses Butterworth languished in jail, accused of piracy. Like many young Englishmen of the time, he had joined a crew that sailed the Indian Ocean to plunder ships of the Muslim Mughal Empire. Throughout the 1690s, these men marauded vessels laden with gold, jewels, silk, and calico on pilgrimage toward Mecca. After achieving great success, many of these men sailed back into the Atlantic to the North American seaboard, where they quietly disembarked in Charleston, Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York City, Newport, and Boston, and made themselves at home. When Butterworth was captured, he admitted that he had served under the notorious Captain William Kidd, arriving with him in Boston before making his way to New Jersey. Now, this would seem quite damning, but the swashbuckling Butterworth was not without his supporters. Local leader Samuel Willett gathered an estimated 100 furious residents to protest, and Benjamin and Richard Borden, armed with clubs, freed Butterworth from the colonial authorities. A scuffle ensued wherein the judge and sheriff injured both Borden brothers, but the crowd succeeded in taking Butterworth away. The mob then seized Governor Andrew Hamilton, his followers, and the sheriff, taking them prisoner in Butterworth's place. They remained confined for 4 days until Butterworth was free and clear. Jailbreaks and riots in support of alleged pirates were common throughout the British Empire during the late 17th century. But why? Local political leaders openly protected men who committed acts of piracy against powers that were nominally allied or at peace with England. Largely, they were protecting their own hides. Colonists wanted to prevent depositions proving that they had harbored pirates or purchased their goods. Some of these instigators were even fathers-in-law of pirates. Many colonists feared that crackdowns on piracy masked darker intentions to impose royal authority. Openly helping a pirate escape jail was also a way of protesting policies that interfered with trade. The fact of the matter is, while traditionally depicted as swashbuckling adventurers on the high seas, pirates played a crucial role on land, contributing to the commercial development and economic infrastructure of port towns in colonial America. Pirates could be found in nearly every Atlantic port city. Many of the most notorious pirates began their careers in these ports. Others established deeper ties by settling in these cities and becoming respected members of the local elite. Instead of the snarling, drunken fiends that parade through children's books, these pirates spent their booty on pigs and chickens, hoping to live a more placid and financially secure life on land. Pirates were everywhere, but they were not who we thought they were, at least not in the 17th century. Men, like Moses Butterworth, were welcomed in colonial communities. They married local women and bought land and livestock. Pirate James Brown even married the daughter of the governor of Pennsylvania and was appointed to the Pennsylvania House of Assembly. While piracy permeated colonial life, it has not achieved its rightful place in the narrative of American history. Why? precisely because it was so familiar to the people of the English-speaking world of the 17th century. In the early days of the colonies, pirate attacks were considered a commonplace, inevitable feature of the maritime world, and noted only as entertaining asides. The prevalence of piracy in children's stories and blockbuster movies makes it difficult to study the topic without romanticism, which has caused both historians and fiction writers alike to portray pirates as inherently removed from civilized society. Even 17th century lawyers were in on it, defining pirates as hostis humani generis, or enemies of all humankind. Contemporary historians and popular culture have used pirates for their own ends, depicting them as rebels against convention and anarchists. But the true rebels were leaders on land like Samuel Willett, who led riots against crown authority. The higher reaches of colonial society supported global piracy, not the underclass. As always, the media didn't help matters by painting pirates as bloodthirsty and cutthroat. Newspaper accounts of Blackbeard mention his victims were given the most barbarous, inhumane treatment, while eyewitness correspondence mentions the destruction of cargo and ships, yet the sparing of passengers. In fact, Arnie Bieluszewski states, "The image of Blackbeard as a fearsome and ruthless villain was created by the media of the day." What we imagine as pirates to look and sound like matches only one decade of history, also referred to as the Golden Age of Piracy. But we'll come back to that. Before that, piracy consisted of a spectrum of activities, from the heroic to the maniacal. Many historians, like many pirate fans, write about piracy as a static phenomenon. This is the basis of popular events like International Talk Like a Pirate Day, celebrated by the brave on September 19th, which happens to be a Monday this year, so stop by the library and say yo-ho. Or the costume worn by Jack Sparrow. But are the common tropes true? Turns out that it depends on when and where. For the period before the 1713 Treaty of Utrecht, which was a peace treaty between France and Britain, the Dutch Republic, Prussia, Portugal, and Savoy, and later Spain, it makes more sense to talk about sailors who commit piracy rather than actual pirates. In most cases, these sailors committed a single act of piracy during their misspent youth, only to turn around to use their plunder to join the middling to upper echelons of colonial society. One reason piracy was often an act or a phase and not a way of life was simply because humans have not evolved to live on sea. The sea is a hostile place offering few of the pleasures of society on land. In order to survive, pirates had to put in a lot of hard work and gain their pleasures while they were ashore. Simply put, what is the value of silver and gold in the middle of the ocean? Why would someone risk their life in a hostile maritime world if there was no chance they could actually spend their booty? A merry life and a short one was not the motto of most pirates of the late 17th century. Until the 1710s, English pirates almost always had somewhere to go to spend their money, either for a few days or to settle down for good. The British National Archives holds a petition from 48 wives of known pirates, begging the crown to pardon their husbands so they could return home to care for their families. Returning to London was not an option for most sea rovers, but a life in the American colonies offered the closest proxy. Support of piracy on the peripheries of the British Empire dates to the first forays of English sea captains overseas. As the years rolled by and the ships ventured toward further shores, the plunder economy of piracy migrated. By the 1680s, pirates who plundered along the Spanish Main or the South Sea coast of Chile and Peru dropped anchor in the North American colonies. In the 1690s, men like Moses Butterworth joined crews heading out of colonial ports to the Indian Ocean. Beginning in 1696, support for piracy was threatened by the British Parliament's efforts to reform the legal and political administration of the colonies. These initial attempts to better regulate the colonies faced heated resistance, like the riot that sprang Moses Butterworth in 1701. Royal officials battled with colonial elites over all forms of political and economic control. But the transformation of law, politics, economics, and even popular culture in a relatively brief period of time soon persuaded landed colonists of the long-term benefits of legal trade over the short-term boom of the pirate market. After being sprung from jail, Moses Butterworth eventually headed to Newport, Rhode Island, where in 1704 he captained a sloop that sailed alongside a man of war in pursuit of runaway English sailors. The former pirate had turned pirate hunter. The expansion of commercial trade, particularly the slave trade, cemented a colonial social order increasingly threatened by instability at sea and less tolerant of social mobility on land. This change in attitudes led to the period we call the War on Pirates, roughly 1716 to 1726, and the advent of sea marauders who, with little hope of ever resettling on land, attacked their own nation. This is the era of characters like Blackbeard, Bartholomew Roberts, and female pirates like Anne Bonny and Mary Read, colorful rebels who lived dangerously and fit the legend. For centuries, pirates had sailed under the flags of their own nations or of foreign princes, often with letters of marque in hand, deeming them sanctioned privateers of the crown. Now they sailed and were hanged under flags of their own construction. Ironic that this period is also known as the Golden Age of Piracy, a time when some of the most fearsome individuals sailed the sea, horrorized by the media and romanticized by novelists. As seen in this diagram, the things that characterize the Golden Age of Piracy versus the War on Pirates are a matter of opinion or perspective. These two very different eras occurred over the same time period, 1716 to 1726, and concerned the same cast of characters: the Crown, the Royal Navy, deserters of the Royal Navy, civilians, merchants, desperate individuals trying to make a living, and individuals searching for a way to gain social status. As always, history, at least written history, tends to favor the victors, and as we all know, pirates were no longer welcomed by the colonial elite. Outlawed vessels were routed from shores that had once harbored pirate nests. In 1718 and 1723, the ports of Newport, Rhode Island, and Charleston, South Carolina, tried and hanged crews of 23 and 26 pirates, respectively, the two largest mass executions not involving a slaves' insurrection in colonial America. As a result, by the late 1720s, the pirate scourge had largely abated. Philadelphia, like many cities throughout the Atlantic world, encountered this new threat in the late 17th and early 18th centuries. Soon after the city's founding, its growing population and economic importance attracted pirates who threatened the region's thriving trade, plaguing shipping routes and raiding numerous merchant vessels in the region. Pirates also remained active after 1730, using the city as a staging ground, especially during conflicts such as the Revolutionary War. While Pennsylvania authorities sought to end piracy throughout the colonial and early national periods, their policy appears ambivalent, as they sometimes extended leniency toward pirates rather than confront them with the full force of the law. Pirates regularly operated around the Delaware River by the late 17th century, which fueled fears about the safety of the local waterways. In 1699, the colony arrested 4 men believed to serve under the notorious pirate Captain William Kidd. That same year, James Brown, a first-year representative from Kent County, was expelled from the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. Supposedly a mere passenger aboard the famous pirate captain Henry Every's, aka John Avery's, ship Fancy, he arrived in Pennsylvania in the 1690s and was able to win the hand of Anne Markham, the daughter of William Markham, Pennsylvania's governor. As a representative of Pennsylvania, Brown was protected under the precedent that assembly members were exempt from appearing in court or going to prison. Must have been nice to be a political leader at the time. Unfortunately for Brown, with his expulsion from the assembly in 1699, any protection afforded by his member status was revoked. He was arrested and ultimately sent to England to stand trial alongside pirates from the infamous crew of William Kidd. Little is known about Brown's fate, but his wife Anne is later listed as a widow, so Brown likely met a pirate's demise in England. In fact, Governor William Markham even allegedly received a bribe from pirate captain Henry Every, who raided ships throughout the Indian Ocean and was subject to an English manhunt. Obviously, there were those who willingly tolerated piracy, largely because of its economic benefits. Pirates spent their booty freely in port cities like Philadelphia, contributing to the region's economic development. Perhaps this is why the Pennsylvania Assembly enacted several statutes to prevent pirates from moving freely in society and to keep others from collaborating with them. But piracy continued to be a major concern for many merchants. In the early 18th century, Marcus Hook, along the Delaware River in the Chichester area, became known for shipbuilding, fishing, and pirates. According to legend, the infamous and much feared Blackbeard, aka Edward Teach, frequently dropped anchor in Marcus Hook to visit his mistress, Margaret. Lieutenant Governor William Keith issued a warrant for the arrest of Teach for his attacks on merchant ships. Keith feared that Blackbeard maintained contact with former pirates who now lived in Philadelphia and aided him in his raids against Philadelphia's merchants. It was rumored that Blackbeard had a wife and family in the city, that he was known in the taverns of the Philadelphia waterfront, and that he frequented a tavern run by a Swedish woman down in Marcus Hook. Could this have been Margaret, his so-called mistress? Surviving correspondence, however, places Blackbeard's piratical activities either in Delaware Bay or off of Cape May. The Pennsylvania Assembly sought to eliminate property crimes such as robbery by making them subject to capital punishment, which could be used in cases against pirates. But perhaps because local authorities realized the financial contribution of pirates to the region, Philadelphia only witnessed one trial for piracy in the first half of the 18th century. In 1730, English sailors serving on board a Portuguese ship mutinied and became pirates before finally being arrested and condemned to death in Philadelphia. During an era where pirates could hope for little mercy, 4 of these condemned pirates surprisingly received a pardon from Pennsylvania authorities after their ringleader escaped. Indeed, many Philadelphians may have supported pirates, as testimony in 1718 in a case alleged that Pennsylvania merchants provided pirates with ammunition and supplies. After 1730, piracy ceased to be a major problem for Philadelphia, although privateers occasionally disrupted the city's shipping. Both colonial officials and the British government sought to reduce the threat of piracy. The Revolutionary War, however, allowed for a resurgence of pirates by the 1780s, when the Continental Congress employed privateers to supplement its meager naval forces. Several crews turned to piracy. Local newspapers complained about these villains who disrupted the Revolutionary War effort, but Pennsylvania's courts condemned only 4 men for piracy in the 1780s. One condemned pirate was even sentenced to have his body gibbeted to deter other potential pirates. Nevertheless, Pennsylvania's government again surprisingly opted for leniency in his case, as well as most of the other condemned pirates, and executed only 1 convicted pirate during this time. By the 1790s, the Pennsylvania legislature removed piracy from the list of capital crimes. Cases of piracy declined into the 19th century. The state did witness several cases of piracy in the early 19th century, but applied the death penalty only in cases in which the pirates committed murder as well. Indeed, in 1837, convicted pirate James Moran was the last individual publicly executed in Pennsylvania for any crime. So what do you think? Did Blackbeard wander the streets of Philadelphia and Marcus Hook going on a pub crawl? Were Pennsylvanians too lax with the law when considering piracy? Are you amazed at the effects of piracy on America's economic and social structures? Let's talk about it in the comments below. Thank you, and we hope to see you at Northampton Area Public Library soon.